Good morning, everybody. I'm Braito from the University of Florence, and I'm here to present this work that is called Measuring Needs and Compliance of Production Processes of Ethnic Enterprise in Prato Industrial District. And the study we have done together with Mario Bizzeri, Leonardo Borsacchi, and Andrea Ferranini. First of all, I would like to introduce the research objectives. We in particular have two research objectives. We wanted to propose and design a new assessment model that is called Small Enterprise Compliance Analysis. And this assessment model allows us to measure the mandatory and assess the mandatory compliance of manufacturing production processes, especially thought for small businesses. And this assessment model includes also environmental and social. It actually focus on that. And together with this assessment model, we also propose the creation of an index that is based on the model, which allows us to measure the level of compliance of this enterprise with respect to 5 different dimensions, which is safety, environmental dimension, fiscal dimension, and training standards. We developed this model and also this index that is connected to the model in this framework of sustainable human local development, because we need and we agree with the need to take into account the connection that we found between sustainable human development, economic growth, innovation system, and public policies. And this renewed interest on local development industrial cluster, upon which we base our research. We need to stress that it goes hand in hand with the current need to overcome the sustainability of the production and consumption, and our work goes in that direction. The case we base everything on is the analysis of Chinese ethnic small enterprise in Prato textile industrial district. And these are Chinese-owned small enterprises that are characterized by very high dynamism, but also engage in and also undergo the use of illegal work and limited compliance with safety and mandatory regulation and taxation. And so at the same time, we have the need to engage in a upgrading strategy for firms of this kind, but general firms, and also in this particular area where there's a high incidence of entrepreneurship is crucial to promote the social economic integration environment concern. And this is linked to the assessment model and the compliance index. So talking about the assessment model, it follows a procedure and combines this innovative integrated checklist that is a questionnaire, and with this, and it's also provided through the assistance of technical mediator, which are people that are trained to actually deliver this questionnaire. And we, as we said before, the analysis is performed on 5 dimensions, which are fiscal, environmental, training, labor contract, and workers' rights and safety. And is based on Italian legislation, but we have to say that there is a comparability between Italian and European legislation on the matter. This integrated approach allows firms to obtain a systematic analysis of the situation. Sometimes they don't even know in which position they are about these requirements, allow the entrepreneur to improve internal management procedure, and also allowed on the other side the streamline policies and business objectives. And also it's really flexible and it can be applied, even though it's thought for small businesses, it can be applied to firms regardless of size, typology, sector, nationality of the entrepreneur. So it can be generalized. This diagram that you see gives us the process that we went through to developing the model. So how the model actually, how the model is thought and what are the steps to arrive to the data in the end. So all the work that is behind creating this particular assessment model and also the delivery of the model, of the questionnaire to the enterprises, and the ASHI checklist, so the delivery of the checklist, which are all the requirements, identification of the issue, and the possible upgrading opportunities. We focus, as we said, on 5 dimensions. What you can see is the last dimension, what it's called work. Let's say environment is a part of the questionnaire that is made for the technical mediators to fill. So it's just made for them, not for the entrepreneur. And it's based on what the technical mediator see in the, it's a checklist that is made on what they should see according to certain standards in that firm, and we can see all the different requirements which are part of the checklist. And then we move forward after we actually assess the model. We construct this index. As we can see, we have the 5 different dimensions, and each dimension has inside requirements which are divided in 3 different levels. And this level, we follow a sequencing rule. So what cannot be achieved before the other. Cannot achieve base if you do not achieve the pre-requirement. And then each considerations of the enterprise. So for level, let's say each requirement for each requirement, one firm can be non-compliant, partially compliant, or totally compliant. First of all, about the case studies, we have to say that this study is based on an action research project, 2 in particular, that's been done between September 2013 and September 2015. A little bit about the context. Prato is really well known for Chinese entrepreneurship. There's firms in textile, clothing, and leather sector, and this 87% of the firms are owned or run by Chinese. In our particular sample, we have to say that the analysis is based on a sample that it has been which this firm have voluntarily undergone this assessment. So was no sampling in particular, but the firms could actually ask to be involved in this project. And also our sample includes 58% of companies that have started their activity after 2012. So at that time, it was really new enterprises. There are mainly really small enterprises, so with less than 15 workers. And the sector activities, the majority are in garment industry, but everything that is related with textile as Pronto Moda and other textile and clothing sector. So first result, we had to aggregate all the requirements we had in the 43. I have to mention that we had to drop one of the dimension in this particular case because we had a problem related to the data that we collected, so the fiscal dimension, since the entrepreneur the Chinese entrepreneur did not own a lot of knowledge about fiscal issue and requirements, because he just gave everything to the accountant to take care of. So we had to drop it, but we can see we use arithmetic mean for this particular section to aggregate all the requirements, or we use the MSI, that is another aggregation method that takes into account heterogeneity of the dimension. And so we can actually observe how the means are a little bit lower. And then we aggregated all this dimension into one unique compliance index. As you can see, we use 4 different methods of aggregation. What is the simple arithmetic mean, the geometric mean, the MSI, and what we call the double MSI. The double MSI is when we used, for the single dimension we are talking about, we use the MSI, and then we use again the MSI to merge them together. As we can see from this particular sample, we have a really low mean, and getting lower using, for example, the double MSI, because it takes care of a lot of heterogeneity among dimensions. So it means that the dimensions are not perfect, cannot be perfectly substituted among each other. And in this graph, we can see one of the 4 indexes and how they overlap in a certain way on high level, and then there's a lot of gaps and differences among which method we use in the low level of scores of the index, and that can be explained through the use of the MSI and the geometric mean, for example, that scale of the heterogeneity that I was talking about, and also the graph on the left, the same. It portrays the positioning on of the firm compared to the different aggregation method of our index. Sorry. So then we created a ranking. And also, so we created this ranking. I just have to say that these particular firms that I put in the slides are just a sample of our firms that are based on third size that have been computed on the double MSI. So we can see the ranking of the different firms and also the different scores that these firms have scored in the different dimensions. Then we also created what we called a direct observational index. So it's based on the direct observation of the technical mediator instead of the documentation and the question that were asked to the entrepreneur. And so they are divided into 31 requirements that are based on workplace safety, environmental management, and work organization. And these requirements could be not adequate, partially adequate, or totally adequate. And then we had to penalize for some negative comments that were made on the local, on actually the places of production. So the workplace comments were out of the checklist, but the technical mediator also had to fill. As we can see, the mean using MSI, I also use MSI here as aggregation methods, which we can see is actually kind of in line with the other mean that we had, the other index that we actually had. And what we wanted to see was putting them together and see where the firms position themselves in these Cartesian plane quadrants. And what we can observe from this picture, this graph, is the fact that we can infer that those firms that are in the first and the third quadrant have actually there's some they are on the same line, in the same line in both the index. So we can see that we can trust this questionnaire in a way in our data collection, whereas the firms that are on the second and the fourth quadrant, there's something wrong with them because they have high score somewhere, like high score in the normal MSI index, so compliance index, and then they have really low score in what is direct observational index. So there's a lack of comparability among the two indexes. So just to conclude, so we think that this procedure is really interesting for many reasons. So it could be is a really interesting tool both for the public and the private sector, and can play an important role if we consider the dynamism of the local system of production, and can play an important role for what concerns upgrading strategy also on a municipality or local system of production level. It's really customizable in a way that the dimension can be changed. So the dimension of interest are the one underlined by our research, but they can be customized. The requirements can be customized depending on the local system of production and, for example, the national legislation. And the next step of our research is to understand which kind of characteristic of the enterprises can influence their scoring in this kind of index. So if they have above 15 workers, or if, for example, which kind of industry they work in, if that actually makes a difference in their scoring. And concerning policy implication on the case study, this kind of work can help to go in the direction of designing a typical certifiable standard that is based on both legal and voluntary requirements. And also, it's really important for the local development and sustainability of textile production change in the local system of production on Prato, and because it gives an opinion and it gives an insight into the situation of these firms and what we need to be able to what they need to be able to actually have an industrial district that is based on quality, ethics, and human dignity in general. So I would like to thank you for the attention, and if you have any question about our presentation and our work, you can just send us an email, both to Mario Biggeri or to me, Elisa Braito. Thank you again.